going on, people? LP 2000 right back at you with another video. And yes, this is part 2 of my Kaiju discussion involving the Godzilla film series. First, I did the awesome, campy, kid-friendly, all over the place Showa series of Godzilla. So now let's go to my second favorite film series of Godzilla, the Heisei series. And let's just dive head first into this discussion. It's been really fun going through these movies because I've been watching all these movies in order, you know what I'm saying? Just to get the feel for the films, to get the feel what was going on at the time of the films. And it's really been fun, especially going through the Heisei series, With the Showa series, it's a fun series. It's my favorite series, as y'all know. But I can see how it turned a lot of people off because it started off serious, but with Godzilla 54, Godzilla Raised Again, or whatever. Then it went towards the campy direction with King Kong versus Godzilla and Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster and Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster, Son of Godzilla, all those fun kid-friendly films. And I'm sure, like I said, that kind of like turned some people off because it wasn't the serious tone or the serious personification of the original Godzilla. It didn't have that serious tone as the series went on, And the last time we saw Godzilla, he was a superhero. He was fighting off enemy monsters, doing Ultraman gestures and mile-long drop kicks and running and punching and all these uncharacteristic things that the original Godzilla was not about. So they decided to come back in the mid-80s, you know what I mean, and bring back Godzilla to his dark nuclear holocaustic roots. After Terror of Mechagodzilla, the last film that Showa series ended, they tried to bring other Godzilla scripts in after that point because that film was not supposed to be the original Godzilla film, the Showa series, but it turned out to be. They tried to get some scripts off the ground, but they couldn't, get them off the ground to get greenlit to be filmed. So Godzilla ended up having a 9-year hiatus. You know what I mean? And they just decided just to push the reset button and just start from scratch. And just basically ignore all the events that happened between Godzilla Raised Again and Terror Mechagodzilla. And basically, which brings us to the first film of the Heisei film series. Even though it's technically a Showa film, The Return of Godzilla 1984 or Godzilla 1985, if I flip-flop between those two titles, I'm sorry, but I grew up on Godzilla 1985, but I know a lot of people know this film as Godzilla 1984 and vice versa. So if I flip-flop, I'm sorry, but I love Godzilla 1985. So, but technically, that's technically a Showa film because it was made around the time of the Showa time in Japan. But unofficially, amongst Godzilla fans, Godzilla 1985 or The Return of Godzilla 1984 is unofficially the first film of the Heisei series, but it's not technically so. All right, so let's just start head first with 1985, Godzilla 1985, or The Return of Godzilla 1984. I don't want to go a lot of details into it because I'm planning to do a Kaiju discussion devoted to this film, Godzilla 1984, with my brother from another mother. You know him as Godzilla out there here on YouTube or something, man. I don't want to go to a lot of details, as well as Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah. I'm planning on doing another Kaiju discussion with another awesome Godzilla YouTuber out there, Gojira 851, Matt Jacobson. What's going on? So I'm planning on doing a Kaiju discussion of those films with those great YouTubers. So I'm just going to do what I did the last time with the Showa series. I'm just going to skim through the films, not go through a lot of detail, and give you my thoughts and opinions on those films. So let's go with Godzilla 1985 or Return of Godzilla 1984. I really do love this film. You know what I mean? This film does not feature any other monster in the film besides Godzilla. There's no monster conflicts. But he does battle the Super X, you know what I mean? Which is a really cool scene in the film. I like this Godzilla. It's the fact that he has a very dark and basically it's a revamped version of his Showa roar, but it's more dark. It's more aggressive. I love that roar, which they would use for the next two films. But I know a lot of people don't really like this film because Godzilla is not fighting other monsters, and I think that's a bad thing, you know what I mean? I mean, for people to make that assumption. Because Godzilla 1954 was an awesome film, and guess what? Godzilla didn't fight any monsters in that film. So I look at Godzilla 84 kind of the same way, but to me, they're different versions of Godzilla. In 54, he was basically an enraged demon that came to punish humanity because of what happened with the nuclear testing that brought about bringing him back to life. In Godzilla 1985, to me, he's more of a giant wandering animal. He's not purposely coming to the cities to destroy people or to kill people. It's just that to me, he's lost. He's just a giant animal, giant monster that just walks about the earth and it's just lost. And when he goes to a civilized situation, you know, and he sees people fleeing in terror, and then you have the military that comes in and tries to stop him, and which makes him even more enraged. And you get this whole Super X element, and you know, he just goes bonkers. He just goes crazy. So his enraged scenes is involved with him, the conflict being brought to him. And you know, like I said, to me he's lost. I mean, that's the personification of Godzilla in this film to me. He just lost. And wherever he goes, he's going to cause destruction. He's going to cause panic. He's going to cause mayhem. It's not through faults of his own. It's not like he's willingly come to Japan to destroy people and destroy the country. Like I said, he just lost. And I think that was a great way to bring about this Godzilla, because you can't really replicate what happened in Godzilla 1954. I mean, you just can't. You know what I mean? I heard kind of Shin Gojira kind of like does that, maybe. I can't wait to see the film in October. Before it's Godzilla 1985 or Godzilla 1984, it's a great film. It really is a great film. A great film to start the Heisei film series. I prefer Godzilla 1985, to be honest with you. To me, I loved 84. I didn't watch 84 till I was like an adult, but I grew up in 1985. Even though the scenes in that film involving the Americans with the unnecessary comedy is just too much in some respects, but I grew up in 85, and I love 85. I love the inclusion of Raymond Burr, a la what happened in the 54 with Godzilla 1954 in comparison to Godzilla King of the Monsters. And his monologue at the end, after Godzilla falls into the volcano, that monologue alone makes me pick 85 over 84. But yes, a great way to start off with the Heisei series with Godzilla 1985. I love the suit. I love the roar. Just whatever. And once again, I hope they make a gigantic series figure out of the 84. X Plus, if you're watching, because I know you see a lot of your proteges here, you know, whatever. Hopefully you can make a gigantic 1984 at some point, hopefully. So let's go into the next film of the Heisei series, Ghazals Biollante, which in my opinion, the next film is my personal favorite, but I would have to say as far as the best film of the Heisei series is Ghazals Biollante. Just a great story. It picks up basically after the events of 1985, which is very, very awesome. Even though this film was made 5 years after Godzilla 1984 and 1985, and a couple things playing into that. The fact that King Kong Lives came out in Japan, I think like around 86 or 87 or one of the two. And since that movie was a train wreck of a movie, they felt that there was no interest in giant monsters, which is why the production of Godzilla Biollante was pushed back in 1989. But when they finally did bring it, it's a great film from top to bottom. The action is great, the story is great, the special effects is great. It features my favorite version of Super X, Super X2, even though it does get destroyed. That's my favorite version of Super X. The introduction of Mechagodzilla, my favorite character of all time in the Godzilla film series, of any film series, really. And I say this many times, and I'll say it again here. To me, Ghazals Biollante is more sort of a continuation of Godzilla 1985. It shows what would happen if Godzilla were to come back, which he did after the events of 84, and it shows him rampaging across Japan, and there's nothing that anything or anybody or the military can do to stop it. Plus, they throw Biollante into the mix, you know, whatever. So you get a continuation of Godzilla of 1985, but you also have a monster versus monster conflict or whatever. I know that is probably the crux, or at least that's the main reason why some people don't like this film. Is the fact that Biollante was, for one, a new monster, and number two, there were no like Pier 6 brawls or like any entertaining monster battles like you would find in the later Showa films. But you look at something with Biollante being so massive or whatever, and Godzilla being so bulky and his arms being more towards his body, he couldn't do what he did in the 70s films. He couldn't pick up Biollante and body slam her, or grab her by one of her tentacles and spin her around like a lasso, you know, whatever. You know what I'm saying? Of course, I'll admit the fights are not that good, or at least they're not that more MMA style fighting that we're used to when it comes to Godzilla films. But you know what? It didn't need to be that way because of the bulk and size of the monsters. It's just two contrasting monsters, one more mobile than the other one. and I think it's good. It really is good. His first battle with the Rose form Biollante was great. The second battle was great, even though they were both brief. But like I mentioned, I think the meat of the story is how Japan will deal with Godzilla. You know, I mean, because obviously with Godzilla returning, they're more mindful of the fact that Godzilla is back. And that's one thing I love about the Heisei series. In each film, they have at least a heavy involvement with the military or the government. This film series takes the approach of if Godzilla were to really exist in a real life situation, they take their stories in that perspective, where you look at it from their perspective, where it's government or the military or whatever, that, you know, we have this giant creature that's off our shores that could come in at any time, whatever. And they take a realistic approach, you know, how we deal with this. That's why they eventually make G-Force and Mechagodzilla and Mogera, which I'll touch on in a few minutes. But I just like that approach, that realistic approach. Towards the 70s or whatever, Godzilla was on Monster Island, and he would just come through whenever there was a new threat, you know, whenever a new threat would appear. And the Japanese people are basically fine with that. They're basically fine with the fact of a giant radioactive monster on an island that's not too far away from them that will come in and just, you know, they just, you know, that doesn't bother them. That doesn't concern them that a monster is near them and it can come in and just, even though he saves people, he still destroys stuff. So, I mean, but at least with the Heisei series, they're mindful of Godzilla being back. They're more mindful of this creature being here, which is like I love Ghazals Biollante because they have that approach, especially with the 4 alarm systems, you know whatever. The alarm system, you know, there's like a psychic connection or a psychic signal that indicates that he's coming back, or visual evidence when he returns or when he lands on a specific area of Japan. I love that film. I really love that film for all these realistic approaches that I just mentioned. All right, now let's go into the next film, which is my personal favorite, Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, my personal favorite of the Heisei series, you know, whatever. And I know this film is one of those films like some of Godzilla or Godzilla 2014 or I would say Final Wars maybe, or just a film where it is split down the middle. You either love this film or you hate it. I'm in a camp where I love this film. I would have to say that even though it's my personal favorite, I wouldn't recommend this film to first-time fans unless they saw like prior films involving Godzilla and King Ghidorah. Because this film requires a lot of patience. The build-up is really slow. There's a slow burn to it. You know what I mean? Godzilla doesn't really officially appear until like an hour into the film, and the film like is over 30 minutes later. But I do enjoy the fact that they were able to create a backstory behind the origin of Godzilla. You know, they showed him being a dinosaur and then how he becomes to be irradiated and become this giant super monster that we all know him to be. I really do like that. I don't like the fact that they changed King Ghidorah's origin. You know what I mean? He's no longer a space monster. He's basically he's 3 Dorats, 3 little small creatures with wings and fangs and hair or whatever. And that's one thing about that film. I have a hard time believing those 3 things merged into King Ghidorah. That's one thing I can't wrap my mind around. I just can't. I really can't. Those things are just so cute. How are they able to form into a 3-headed, terrifying, lightning spewing, flying monster? Just, you know, whatever. It's just too much for me to digest. I mean, but I understand, whatever. But the build up to that, the build up to Godzilla and King Ghidorah fight in the film is really, really, really good. I know the time travel element in the film is kind of wonky. You know what I mean? It's just, there are a lot of things that make you question what's going on. But it's one of those films where it's like, you know, so what? You have to just enjoy the film for what it is. At least try to anyway. And this film was given a bigger budget versus Biollante, because Biollante did poorly at the box office, so they came up with a bigger budget for Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah. And it does show, even though I have to say that I think the miniature work and the cinematography work was better in Biollante. But I love Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah. I love that film. And it's just the whole dynamic between Godzilla and King Ghidorah, the fact that basically they swapped places in the course of one film. All my wrestling fans out there, and all my WWF Attitude fans out there, y'all remember the match between Stone Cold Steve Austin and Bret Hart at WrestleMania 13? If you, yeah, I see y'all. I see y'all. If you don't know, it was two great wrestlers, Bret Hart, Stone Cold Steve Austin. You know what I mean? Stone Cold Steve Austin went in as the bad guy. Bret Hart went in as the pseudo good guy / bad guy, whatever. It's a long story, but either way, during the course of that match, at the end of the match, after the match was done, they basically swapped places where the crowd was cheering Stone Cold and booing Bret Hart. That's kind of how it was in this film, in a way. Godzilla starts out as the neutralizer of King Ghidorah, but then after he does that, Godzilla becomes a bad guy. Then they have to rely on King Ghidorah to take out Godzilla. I like that dynamic, especially between these two monsters, these two iconic monsters, these two enemy monsters, or whatever. I would have to say that. Would you ask me if a film involving these two monsters that face each other for the first time could have been better? I would have to say yeah. I kind of wish the story was better involving these two monsters fighting for the first time one-on-one, because every other film involving these two involves another monster. But this is the first time that Godzilla and King Ghidorah face off head to head, one-on-one. And even though the story is kind of lackluster in some areas, I really do enjoy the film, and it's still my favorite film in the Heisei Film Series, and my number 3 Godzilla favorite film of all time. Love that film. Love it, love it, love it. Now we go to 1992 with Godzilla vs. Mothra. And this is when they started to make these films yearly, and it kind of shows in the production. As I mentioned before in a couple of my videos with Bactra and Godzilla 1992 from X Plus, my favorite reviews, please check that out in the archives when y'all get a chance. Godzilla vs. Mothra 1992 is not one of my favorite films. There's so many things work against the film for me liking it. For one, I don't like the fact that they changed Godzilla's roar. I know that y'all have heard that too many times for me, but I can't help it. I just can't help the fact that they changed Godzilla's roar to his Showa roar. And to me, and this Godzilla at this point was 100 meters tall, which is like, 312 feet tall, whatever. He was bigger and more powerful than it was in the Showa film. To have him emit that roar just doesn't seem right. And you know what? I'll tell you what. Let's do something different right fast, okay? Let's do something different. Check this out. I want to do 2 things, and you tell me in the comment section which sounds better coming from this Godzilla. All right? Let's go with number 1. All right, let's go with number 2. You see what I'm saying? You see how they both look and sound different? You know what I mean? And to me, in my opinion, the Heisei Godzilla film roar looks better coming from that version of Godzilla versus the Showa roar. You know what I mean? And it's no different. Like if you see a big, giant, jacked up muscle guy, and he's all built, and he's intimidating looking, he's menacing, he's imposing, but then he talks like this. I mean, wouldn't that make you go like, really? I mean, wouldn't that, because it wouldn't sound right from a guy that big and jacked up would have the voice of a mouse. You know what I mean? The same thing applies here with Godzilla. You know what I mean? But whatever. That's my biggest gripe with the Heisei films, the fact that they changed Godzilla's roar in this film, Godzilla vs. Mothra. But I have to say, Bachelor is the saving grace of the film, in my opinion. His fights with both Mothra and Godzilla are very, 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 very good. Even though that they recreated some of the some scenes from the original Mothra film, Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, and whatever. Even though they just basically retread the same stuff in this film, you know, it's not up there for me. You know what I mean? But I mean, I enjoy it for what it is, but it's by far my least favorite of the Heisei film series. So let's go into Godzilla, 1993, with Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, 1993. And this time, Mechagodzilla is back. You know, whatever. You know, they decided to bring back more of Godzilla's Showa foes. You know, with King Ghidorah, Mothra, and now we go to Mechagodzilla. And this time, he is no longer an alien, city-destroying cyborg. He's basically a super weapon to defend Godzilla from Japan. And that's, once again, that's one thing I love about the Heisei film series, the fact that they were able to have all these different these measures, these countermeasures in place of if and when Godzilla were to return. And I really do enjoy that. I really do enjoy the idea and the premise of G-Force. The fact they would make a military establishment just for the sole purpose of defending Japan from Godzilla or any other kaiju. I really do like that. But I have to say, I don't really like Rodan. You know what I mean? I don't really like that version of Rodan. And once again, this is one of my least favorite Godzilla films too. You know, whatever. And in this film, they start to change Godzilla's persona. You know, whatever. He is no longer, or he's still a threat. Don't get me wrong, he's still a threat, because that's the whole purpose of the Heisei series, to keep Godzilla as a threat, as a villain per se. But in this film, he started to become less of a villain, because they included, they brought back Godzilla's son. No, it's not Minya, so don't get too antsy there. But they brought his version of his son here in this film with baby Godzilla, and he looks more like a Godzilla creature, like a baby Godzilla creature. You know, whatever. And in this film, it's kind of hard, because I know if the purpose of the film was to root for Mechagodzilla, you know what I mean, and Godzilla is still the bad guy or whatever. In this film, especially in the next film, Space Godzilla, when he comes to Japan, he's not coming to Japan to destroy people. You know, whatever. I mentioned this before in one of my videos, that in the next 3 films, if anything brings Godzilla back to Japan, it always goes back to his son. Or it goes back to his, his offspring. In this version, baby Godzilla calls, at least I know he calls to him once. Or at least he's drawn to him somehow. So basically, Godzilla is coming to claim his offspring. That what brings him back to humanity. So it's kind of hard to root against Godzilla, since, you know, he's coming just to claim his son, you know, whatever. So who do we root for? Mechagodzilla or Godzilla? I mean, either way, we're going to root for Godzilla regardless, whether he's a villain or a bad guy. But still, from a storyline standpoint, it can be confusing. I can understand that. And of course, in this film, you can tell that Godzilla, his persona was changing. Because after he had that first battle with Mechagodzilla, after Godzilla knocked him down or whatever, and you can rest assured that if there was a monster, or if a monster had the ability to knock Godzilla down, when he gets back up, he's either going to kill you or he's going to cripple you. One of the two. But in this case, all he does was just push Mechagodzilla down and just walks off. You know, whatever, because he's more focused on trying to figure out where his son is, or wherever it is that's drawing him to Kyoto at that point. So yeah, they started to change it, you know, whatever. They started, you know, making him a tweener or whatever, which is good. But like I mentioned, I would still prefer him as a villain, as a bad guy. But you know, certain changes I'm not really a fan of. Then we go to Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla 1994, which y'all know is not one of my favorite Godzilla films. Also, just this period between Mothra, Mechagodzilla, and Space Godzilla 92, 93, 94, the Heisei series. To me, it just started to lose steam. It started to not have the traction that the Showa series did. You can say what you want about the Showa series, but at least the Showa series, they had, even though they had like weird monsters and weird storylines, each movie of the Showa series had something different that drew you in. You know what I mean? And it's like, I feel like with these 3 films, if you were to take one of these films and take it out of the Godzilla film history, would it really make a difference? You know what I mean? Like, in comparison, if you take Godzilla vs. Monster Zero out of the equation in the Showa series, that would make a big difference, because it was the start of, you know, of the alien using monster to take over the world storyline or whatever. I'm just using that as an example. But with 92, 93, 94, it's just, these films were just, they seem like they were making these films just to be making films. You know what I mean? It kind of makes me wonder what would happen if they would have made a Gamera Heisei film series at the same time as Toho was making Godzilla's Heisei film series. You know what I mean? Because nothing nothing steps your game up like competition. You know what I mean? So, and with Gamera having those awesome films in the Heisei film of his Heisei film career, those awesome films that set the new bar as far as kaiju films and how they're made. It kind of makes you wonder what would have happened if they would have made them at the same time as Ghazals Heisei film series. Maybe it would have made Toho step their game up, and they wouldn't have to rely on like using the same war for three monsters, Mecha King Ghidorah, Rodan, and Batra or whatever. It wouldn't have pushed Toho like they do. You use a lot of green screen, but then at the same time, I did the nerdy thing and went on Wikipedia and looked at the budgets. They had really great budgets for their films. You know what I mean? Really great budgets for their films, like in the millions or billions if you do it in the yen currency. But they had these awesome budgets to get these films told, but at the same time, their execution is just off. Like I mentioned, I mean, going with Space Godzilla, I enjoy Space Godzilla. I enjoy the idea of this monster, this space monster, this twisted version of Godzilla coming down to destroy the world and destroy Godzilla also. But I don't like Megaera. I mean, I don't like just, it's just one of my least favorite films. But I can appreciate the film for what it is. I mean, like I mentioned with Godzilla vs. Monster 1992, Batra was the saving grace for that film, and then Space Godzilla. Space Godzilla is the only really real reason to really enjoy Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla. This is just my opinion, whatever. Everything else about the film is just, man. You know what I mean? But that's just my opinion, so don't come at me with pitchforks. I'm just giving you my opinion here. But like I mentioned before, with Godzilla vs. Mothra and Mechagodzilla 2, I do enjoy the film for what it is. I just wish it could have been a little bit more, especially with the budgets that they have for themselves. Just the execution could have been handled a whole lot better. But they make up for it in 1995 with the final film of the Godzilla Heisei film series, Godzilla vs. Destroyer. Yes, yes. What an epic way to end the film series of any character. Godzilla goes out in a blaze of glory, no pun intended. He fights an awesome monster in Destroyer. You know, they included Godzilla, Godzilla Jr., whatever, which looks more like him, which is good. And at the very end, you see Godzilla Jr. all grown up to be the adult Godzilla, and it just ends right there where you just left open to your own interpretation what happens after that point. And of course, they decided to kill Godzilla to make room for the American Godzilla that came out in 1998. Yeah. And I have to say, can you imagine what would happen if Toho were able to look into the future and see how that film fared amongst the fan base? I would have to believe they would have kept on making Godzilla films. Even though they were kind of becoming lackluster at the time, I still feel like they would keep on making Godzilla films. And this is a theory of mine, you know what I mean? So just listen what I'm about to say. I think, because the original plan for Godzilla vs. Destroyer was the Godzilla faced off against the original Godzilla. Like the ghost of the original Godzilla 1954 will come back and materialize into a flesh and blood Godzilla, and he will face his modern day counterpart. That was going to be the original Godzilla final film of the Heisei film series. And if you look at the films, up until Destroyer, starting with Mechagodzilla, you know what I mean? And of course, they didn't do that in Destroyer in 1995 because they felt Godzilla faced too many versions of himself. But if you look at the films and what they were going for, in 1993, Mechagodzilla Part 2, he faced a Godzilla creature, but it was a robotic version. Okay, but it wasn't a flesh and blood Godzilla like himself. Then you go to Space Godzilla. It's a flesh and blood Godzilla, but it's a space evil twisted version. So it's not really truly a true Godzilla, but it still was like it was one step closer to being a true Godzilla. So I think that was the plan. I think that could have really worked. I think if that was the plan, and if they would have executed right, that would have been a great way to end the Heisei film series. Nothing against Godzilla vs. Destroyer, because I love that film. I really do love that film. But that is one storyline that I've always wanted to see Toho tap into, and they never did. They've never done that. They have never done a Godzilla vs. Godzilla storyline. Of course, we saw glimpses of it in Mechagodzilla 1974, or you can say Godzilla X Mechagodzilla, where Kiryu is an artificial version of Godzilla with his DNA inside him, but it's still not a flesh and blood Godzilla. And I think that would have been the perfect time to have a film like that. I don't think we're ever going to see it. That's just my opinion, but I think that would have been a great way to go. Because, I mean, they already established in the Showa film series even though they ignore it. It's already established that there are multiple Godzillas out there, and you can even create a storyline where, you know, since there are more than one Godzilla, you can have multiple Godzilla species. And of course, not every animal of a different species, even though it's kind of the same animal, is going to agree eye to eye. So I think that would have been perfect. That would have been great to tap into a Godzilla 1954, the Showa version versus the Heisei version, and see them go head to head. Because I think, in my opinion, even though he got somewhat defeated by King Kong and got subdued by Mothra, Godzilla has never really been like beat down, or at least been truly tested, in my opinion. And I think the only way to stop Godzilla is with Godzilla himself. So maybe, you know, I wish they could have done that. I really did. But it was not to be. They created Godzilla Destroyer, a great film, an awesome film, the perfect way to end Godzilla, the end the era of Godzilla. And I said it before, if this was the last Godzilla film to ever be filmed, and they didn't bring 98 or the Millennium Series, as awesome as those films are, I think that would have been perfect. A great way to go out. You know what I mean? So, that's pretty much it with all of the Heisei films. I mean, I love them. I really do. Even though I have issues with some of them, I really do love the films. I mean, I love every Godzilla film. Even though there are some that are not high up on the list for me, I still love them all. I really do love all the Godzilla films in some way, shape, or form. They are all entertaining at some shape or form. But the Heisei films stick out, like I mentioned, with the whole military and government approach to the film, the realistic approach of these monsters here, especially Godzilla here in everyday life, and they want to prepare themselves in case, if and when he comes back. And I think that's good. I like the fact that, you know, most of the battles are at night, you know, whatever. With the exception of Godzilla King Ghidorah, every final battle occurs at night. Yeah, it occurs at night. And of course, the sets that they were on, you know, obviously took a good chunk of the budget, but they had great monster sets, whether it's Tokyo in 85, Osaka in 89, Tokyo again in 91, Yokohama in 92, Tokyo in, I believe, in 93, Fukuoka in 94, I think it's the Haneda Airport in 95 or whatever. You know, just all these great things. I know, like I said, the fights kind of can be lackluster because it mostly were beam attacks and, you know, rays attacks, you know, laser attacks. There wasn't any of the physical close combat that we saw in the Showa films. But like I mentioned before, they didn't need to be, because they were really big, bulky monsters. From Biollante, Destroyer, Space Godzilla, Mechagodzilla, King Ghidorah. They were really big, bulky monsters, and it wouldn't look right to have them being thrown around like ragdolls. So I can understand that. I really understand that. And the music is great. Akira Ifukube comes back, you know, and scored a couple of films, even though they kind of like revamped versions of his old iconic classic monster themes, and coming back and doing a different spin or whatever. Great. It really is great. Like I mentioned before, the monsters look great. The films look great. It's just an awesome series, you know, whatever. And I can understand if the Heisei film series is your favorite versus the Showa or the Millennium. I can understand that. I think a case can be made for any Godzilla film series to be the best, you know, whatever, because they all offer something different, you know, whatever. But I mean, I do love the Heisei series. You know, I have having fun with them. It's too bad that they couldn't get the mileage, you know, at least get more film out of them, because they only had 7 films, whereas the Showa series had 15. But hey, there's a purpose to having Blu-rays, right? You can just pop them in and enjoy them over and over again, and it's just awesome. So yeah, this has been really fun talking about the Godzilla film series of the Heisei period. Yes. Go out your way and get them on Blu-ray from Walmart, Amazon, wherever you gotta go. But yes, get them all and just enjoy them. You will have a really good time. You know what I mean? So this has really been fun. So yes, y'all know what's coming up next. Yes, I'm going to do the Millennium series. Oh yes, GMK. Woo! Can't wait to do that one. Yeah, but in the meantime, yes, this has been really fun. So do me a favor. Have a good time today on this Labor Day weekend, you know, and just pop one of these awesome Heisei films. You'll not be disappointed. Godzilla 1985, Ghazals Biollante, Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, Godzilla vs. Mothra, Godzilla Mechagodzilla, Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla, and of course, Godzilla vs. Destroyer. And you will not be disappointed. All right, thank y'all so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Thank y'all so much. Thank you for wanting to see these videos, whatever, and hear my take and my perspective. It's really been awesome. Your feedback has really been great. and is welcome at all times. I really do appreciate it. All right, and I will see y'all again on this figure and movie review. All right, y'all take it easy.